Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. Now let me see. So today I'm going to do a tag. This is the BookTube Bio Tag created by Jessica's library card. And I was tagged by Jack Edwards. He gave a real nice talk about how no, it wasn't Jack Edwards, it was Steve Donahue. I sometimes confuse the two. Both are pillars of the BookTube community. Both have read every book that you could possibly want to read. Both have walls of books which they like to display, and besides that there are physical attributes which make them fairly indistinguishable one from the other. So it's an easy mistake to make. It was Steve Donahue. He tagged me, and in his video, I will put a link in the description box to his video as well as Jessica's original version of this tag, if I can find it. I was looking for it and couldn't, though. He talked about how in the BookTube community there is a standard known as the BookTube newbie tag, and when you decide to become a booktuber, you are supposed to first thing do this tag, and I did see it, actually, Jessica's, because she talked about that as well. How there should be a tag for people to help people get to know you when you yourself are past the stage of doing the BookTube newbie tag. Now, I've seen people do, I think it's a BookTube newbie tag 2.0, but Steve made the point that on BookTube, you don't realize it, but people are finding your channel all the time. And so even though to some regular viewers, you may be old hat and they may know your I don't know, peccadillos and propinquities, somebody new may not. And so there's always a good reason for reintroducing yourself. And so the occasion has arisen. This tag has 10 prompts. I won't be able to answer all of them, I am sure. Number one, who are you? Share a little bit about yourself as much as you feel comfortable. And I should say that I will put these in the description box as well. My name is David Novak. Contrary to the title of this channel, I do not, as a rule, read poetry. Once in a while I do. I've done some out loud readings of poetry recently. And this channel came into being as a vehicle for reading poetry out loud. Now, I do have an affiliation or association with poetry. When I was 11 years old, I believe it was 11 years old, in 6th grade, I know that it was in 6th grade, I had an encounter with the poetic muse. I wrote a poem in response to a class assignment given by Mr. Wardlow. And it set a whole course of events in motion. She is here, and she hates him, and I thought better of it. He generally won't kick her out of her spot if she has already claimed it. I live with a menagerie of animals, for one thing. This relationship with the muse, which begun in boyhood, prompted me to realize that I had better educate myself if I were going to be a writer of poetry. And so somewhere along the lines in my late teens, I set about doing that. Not particularly very well. Nowadays, you can go on to YouTube and find an illustrious booktuber, such as Jack, will have a video about the 100 greatest books of all time. No, that was Steve. And so you can have a roadmap for yourself if you choose to avail yourself of it. When I was young, there was no such thing that I knew of. Of course, we didn't have BookTube. And so it was sort of trial and error. I knew that I had heard about Ernest Hemingway, so I got a couple of his books, Movable Feast and the Nick Adams stories, and I had heard about Henry David Thoreau, and so I got that. In my basic English class in college, we had a Franz Kafka story. I was in college a little bit early. And so that led me to an early love affair with the writings of Franz Kafka. And slowly, bit by bit, I have tried to become better read. But I was always hampered by the fact that I had other more interesting things to do. One of them was I liked to write poetry. And so I devoted many hours to attempting to woo the muse, attempting to service the muse, and so forth. And that eclipsed all possible time for reading, except for the reading ultimately that I felt I had to do in furtherance of the writing of poetry. So I was a writer well in advance of becoming a reader. I wanted to be a reader in my youth. My sister was renowned for her great reading skills. She read, in youth, she read the girl detective novels, the Outdoor Girls, the Bobbsey Twins, and then as she matured, she got into romance novels, Georgette Heyer, that kind of thing, and she just could whip them out. I mean, nobody could believe that a person could read like that. And so that was my ideal. I wanted to be like my sister, but I was lazy. About the only thing I really was successful in imitating her in was nail biting, which was a habit I consciously picked up and then years later had to consciously relinquish. The reading itself, while I have read on again and off again throughout my life, it was, as I say, mainly directed toward some kind of goal or just some kind of specific curiosity or obsession of the moment. But it has only been in the last 3 years, now 3 years and 2 months, that I have really been pushing the envelope and reading daily. I try to put in an hour's reading time every day, and so it has made for quite a change in my life. I live in Chicago, though I was born in a suburb of Chicago, Elmhurst. I was kind of wayward in school. I went to a junior college for a couple of years. Then I think I might have taken a year off. And then I went to University of Illinois, Chicago Circle campus. There I took a writing workshop with Paul Carroll, a well-known Chicago poet of the day. I met a good number of friends and we started a poetry writing workshop. I was initially trying to become an artist. Now I had started a little bit at the junior college as well. And I really wasn't sure where I was going, and I took a full year of what was called the foundation program at the school. And it was kind of a mixture of fine arts and commercial arts. So that's what it was called then. And so you would have different projects and assignments that you worked on that went one direction or the other. So we had one, and it was to make, using gouache, these squares, kind of like bingo boards, but they each had to have different colors, and it was imitative of something that Paul Klee had done. And then another one was you had to pick a letter of the alphabet and break it down or deconstruct it or something, do different things with it. I had a final project that was not, I guess, visual arts so much. It was some kind of I don't even know what it was. I didn't understand. It was supposed to involve motion, and it was, I got a B on the project, but that was just because the teacher liked me and didn't want me to fail out. But I had no particularly original bent towards art. One of my teachers was a guy whose career had evolved to doing trapezoids. That's what he did, big trapezoids. One of my classmates was a young woman from Japan, and somehow we got to talking, and she said, "Why don't you come and visit me? I'm going to spend the summer in Japan." And I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And I did it. Now, traveling was not alien to me, because when I was younger, I had taken the bus down to Mexico on occasion. Solo traveling, my parents were not really involved with us, my sister and I, and so they were not protective of us, and possibly my mother was worried here or there, but there was never any attempt at parental control. So we did what we did. So I was already used to traveling, and so I went to Japan, and then one thing led to another. I wound up spending time in Taiwan, and then I wound up having a relationship with things Chinese, which continues to this day. But interestingly enough, I also got some good close-hand experience in Japan. I was there about 9 months before I moved on to Taiwan. And then Taiwan, over time, I went back and forth and studied the language, worked in a trading company when I got tired of trying to teach English. I'm not a teacher. And that time in Japan, because of the need to leave after 6 months for the sake of the visa, I took a trip to South Korea. We crossed over on the ferry with the whole group of us travelers, staying in these hostels and that kind of stuff. The Lonely Planet Southeast Asia on a shoestring. I think the Yellow Bible, they called it, was popular among everybody. So there were lots of people traveling, and not just white kids from the United States. I remember meeting people from all over. There was a guy from Sri Lanka that was a friend, and there was a guy from Africa named Leo staying at the hostel. And so it was a very cosmopolitan environment. And actually, all of this has served me well. Coming from a white enclave of a suburb, there was the occasional Japanese or Chinese kid. For a year or two, there was a black girl in my grammar school, but I wasn't really thinking about girls at that time. So whiteness was all, as far as I knew, but because of this early experience, which just sort of happened accidentally, the whole course of my life turned out differently to that, say, of my neighbor 2 doors down, who stayed in the suburb, stayed living with his parents until one by one they died, meaning both of them died. And I hope he's doing well. I've sort of lost touch. That's probably good. That might even be more than you wanted to know. How long have you been on BookTube? I think it's about 2 years now. What kind of books do you love to read? This is a 2-part one. And, well, let's just say I like to read history. I like to read big novels. I like to read a little bit of literary criticism. This will all come up in a moment. Even though they hate each other's guts, they will sometimes be in close proximity, both on my lap. He's thought twice about it, however. The most bizarre thing, though, is earlier today I saw her go and give him a kiss, which is really crazy because he attacks her all the time. Well, she told him his presence is not welcome here. Oh. So that's what I love to read. I try to stretch the parameters. Okay, he's decided to stay here. That might not work too well. Has BookTube had an effect on what you read? And it has. I know, doo-doo. Well, now this is tough now. Just, okay. So, I thought I would just show a handful of fiction books. Now, these are not the great big mammoths that I do like on occasion. This is a collection of short stories. This is a nice novel which actually does involve elements of magical realism, and so does this one as well. This is a collection of short stories, and this is a novel. You probably can't see that. It's Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee. Perhaps you can see it there. I'm beginning to feel like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Oops, sorry, kiddo. Oh, okay, there he goes. I would not have read any of these had it not been for hearing about them on BookTube. Well, I guess he's going to stay. Number 4, what do you enjoy about making BookTube videos? Well, I really enjoy talking about the things I've read, sort of fiddling my way through some of the interesting ideas that I've picked up. Oh, that's better. He'll probably just lay over there. When you turn on the camera and start talking, in my case, I don't have bullet points laid out. I don't have an outline that I'm following. I just kind of go extemporaneously. Sometimes I'll have thought in advance a little bit, or I'll have pulled out some books or props to help guide me along, or that I think I might want to use. So I mean, it's not like I'm going into it blindly, but you never know what is going to pop out of your mouth once you start talking. And so, as with, say, writing, it's a way to help refine your thought and just process what you have just been reading. So it's just a further step in that. So I really enjoy that aspect of making videos. Now, what do you not enjoy about making videos? It's the threat of misspeaking. I've noticed how, and it's not just with me, I've noticed I think it just must be a factor of human speech, that it's very easy just to use one word instead of the one that you meant, one word instead of another. So I will oftentimes say I wrote instead of I read. You know, I will often say one name instead of another. I just did a reading of Hardy, and then when I finished, I said, well, that's it for Yeats. So and then beyond that, just sometimes you just go off and you just go into realms of sheer idiocy. But all of that it just goes with the territory of being human. So I mean, I say I don't enjoy that aspect per se, but ultimately it's probably a good experience as well. Number 6, what video on your channel are you the most proud of? I can't say that I really feel that way toward my videos. After I've filmed something, I try to watch through it one time. If there's an obvious error that I've made, I've misspoken or I've misidentified something, I try to put a little note in the description box. I don't know how to flash words across the screen. But after that is done, as with most things, they are gone from my memory, so I don't really think about them. I think that's a pretty common experience as well. Number 7, is there anything you wish was different about BookTube? Can't really say that there is. I've been real happy with the whole BookTube community. It really is marvelous. I mean, as Steve was saying, you watch BookTubers because you want to hear what that person has to say about the books they are reading. In my case, sometimes I'm curious about the book. I want to know more about the book, and sometimes not so. But in all cases, it's because I find what this person has to say will be of interest to me. There is a kind of community with people who read, irrespective of genre, I think. Okay, number 8. Name 3 books that you have reviewed on your channel that you feel represent who you are as a reader. Well, I would not say that I have reviewed a book on my channel. Mostly I'll talk about some reactions to the book. I think I possibly would be capable of reviewing a book if I set my shoulder to the grindstone, but I am sure it would require of me something like 100 hours to try to put together some kind of a review. It's just not something that I could see myself being good at. Just in general, trying to write prose is difficult enough, and then to try to assess something along those lines, it would be absolutely too time consuming. I almost was going to say a time waster for me, but I don't think it would be a waste of time, but it would be an allocation of time to an activity which I don't think would reward me all that much. I'm happy enough with my loose impressions after reading something. As I say, if I make a video talking about a book, then sometimes that helps me clarify some things that I have thought. Sometimes not. Oh, and the other part was 3 books that I feel represent who I am as a reader. Well, I might have said this at a time, ancient history. I've talked about it so much that I decided not to go with that. It's it's a book about history that I read when I was very young. And so I've been, throughout most of my life, very curious to learn and understand about history. But I have since becoming a more solid or more solidly dedicated reader for the last 3.5 years, I have shifted my focus now to where I am more inclined to actually read history itself as opposed to books about history. So for instance, I have this book, The Hittites, and this was a book that I purchased in a Penguin edition when I was young, after I had started reading M.I. Finley, and it was above my head. I was not even able to tread water when I attempted it. I mean, I was sinking and gasping for air, and finally I set it aside and lost the book in a purge at some point. It was not the current Historathon, but it was something I read for the Historathon of last year. So in January, I guess, of last year, January or February. And it actually represents where I am moving towards today in my reading. Not even ancient history, but ancient history which is more archaeological than literary. And even, I could even foresee moving towards prehistory more than I have done, though I have done a little bit of that. It's a direction which I would not have expected. I would never have foreseen it, but that is the direction I am moving in right now. I've just finished the Archaeology of Ancient China by K.C. Chang, and yesterday put up a video talking about my experiences of that. I said that I like reading big novels, so and I've been trying to read more Chinese classics. I mean, the classic Chinese novels do tend to be big. So on my list for this year, I am hoping to read The Dream of Red Mansions. A couple of years ago, I read The Plum in the Golden Vase. This was what I read last year. So it's in 4 parts. I think this says volume 1, but there are 4. And it's something that I've been enjoying. Last year, also I read War and Peace. So I like tackling some of these big works. Right now, there's a group of BookTubers and others tackling sort of in concert the Arabian Nights, and I read that a couple of years ago as well, simultaneous in my case, or alternating with the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. And that big tome was actually what really opened the door to my reading history proper, because I followed that up with The Crusades by Stephen Runciman. I thought I would show this just as another example, B. Traven, Government. This is the first volume in his Jungle Cycle or Mahogany Cycle of books. It's a series of 6 novels which talk about what life was like under the kind of dictatorship that our present movers and shakers in the upper echelons of Washington, D.C. are struggling mightily to see installed in my country, the United States of America, today. The kind of situation where you have a dictator on every rung whose sole purpose in his position, whichever it is, number one is to make his superior happy, but also to gain as much profit as he can from the people that he has to deal with in the course of his daily business, fulfilling that governmental seat which he has. And then the series moves into life on the mahogany plantations, what it is like to be employed under unfettered capitalist exploitation, such as our billionaires are trying to shape for us these days. And then it culminates in a story of how the laborers break free from that bondage. So it's a series of 6 novels, very well worth your time. The first novel is Government. I've got videos up talking about all of them. I should also add that one of the things, as with that O.R. Gurney book, as I've been reading more solidly, one of the things that I've been trying to do is pick up these books that have been on my shelf for a long time and make my way through them. And then, so that was 3, although I know I threw a couple of extra in I think that was 3. Well, I'm not sure. I get very confused, as you can see. I don't know. Did I miss something? Possibly. And then the other one that I thought, now this is another Chinese classic, The Literary Mind and the Carving of Dragons. It's really the first book, the first full-length book of literary criticism in old China. I think it was an outcropping from the Tang Dynasty, I think. But he takes a survey of all of the literature which had gone before, talks about what makes for good writing. A lot of it is a catalog of writers that you, or at least I, have never heard of, saying this one is better than that one for this reason or that. But I thought I would show it partly because it supports my statement that I'm trying to, at least this year, move my channel in a very China-centric direction. I've got videos somewhere talking about that, but it's been an interest of mine, but also the fact of literary criticism. I've enjoyed literary criticism throughout all of my life. I am actually just on the verge of thinking that maybe I should give it up. Now, I should add, by the way, that this is not the translation that I recommend. Who was it? Was it, I keep thinking it's Li Guoping or something. I don't know exactly the pronunciation, but it's the other translator, not this one. This was the first one done, and it has certain flaws to it. Name 3 booktubers whose content inspires you. I could easily expound upon this, but I thought I would just go with some, again, regular stalwarts of the BookTube community, presenters who who have been around for a while and have established followings. So this won't be any surprise to you. Number 1, I'm going to say Jack the Rambling Raconteur. He just inspires me with his the range and depth of his reading. Now, he is a booktuber who gives a good review of his books, goes into pretty good detail, and then he will. There was a second thing I was going to say which slipped my mind, and then finally he will talk about the book in relation to other books which you might be interested in, which perhaps follow a similar theme or tackle the same subject from a different angle, that kind of thing. But his reviews of books are always very in-depth. Oh, the other thing I was going to say was that he will read little snippets of the book. Now, he doesn't read these huge, long segments that I do on my channel, but it's, if you want to find out about a book in some depth and detail, his is a great channel for that. The next that I would say is the Unflappable Book Chat with Pat. Pat, I'm sure, would never characterize herself as unflappable, and in fact she has relayed accounts of a couple of times when she indeed proved herself to have been flappable, so to speak. But all in all, I would say that is not the case, and she is a prodigious reader and tackles the books that she reads from a variety of perspectives as well. So for example, one of the regular features on her channel is books that I loved to teach. I can't remember if that's the exact title. She spent many years as a teacher at varying levels, and so grew to know certain classics and otherwise books intimately, and has lots of thoughts about them, and also can recount some of the experiences that she had in teaching those books. So it's always very enlightening. And then another feature of her channel is that she will often introduce poetry as a topic. Often on Poetry Thursday, she will focus on one writer, or dedicate an episode to one theme. So poems about friendship. And she is very widely read in poetry. I would say more so than I am, even though I have titled my channel David Novak Reads Poetry. I'm not so widely read. And it's always a good time. And then who was the third one? The third one was Brian at Bookish, and he inspires me just for the, you know, if there were money in BookTube, you would think he was a true professional. I mean, he does not take it fly by night the way I and some other BookTubers do. He thinks very carefully about the books and about what he is going to say. He reads a great range of stuff, a lot of contemporary fiction. Some of those books that I showed were a direct result of something on his channel, but his was not the only channel that I've taken recommendations from. And I have a whole list of books just from his channel that I am trying to get to. I am just not there yet. Instead of going out in every direction, my focus for this year is really narrow. I'm just reading things about China largely, at least probably for the first half of the year. But generally, if you go to his channel, he will, if he's reviewing books, maybe it'll be one, but maybe it'll be two, maybe it'll be three. The video will be about 15 minutes long, say, and he will cover everything. He will tell you everything you need to know about the book. You know, in my case, like as you can see with this video, it takes me 15 minutes just to figure out what I'm doing. And then he has a whole slew of other topics which are always of interest, such as the 10 best novels of such and such, the worst novels of Hemingway. He has videos about where to start with such and such an author. And then added to that, although he's established a separate channel for our immediate situation right now, he has a heightened social conscience, which also is very admirable, and he does not shy away from using his platform to talk about issues even which some viewers might find to be hot button issues. So he's another inspirational booktuber. So that is 3. And then the last question or prompt is share the love. It can be challenging to find your audience. Name 3 booktubers who you think need more hype. That's something that I can't really weigh in on, because I don't really know who's getting a lot of hype. I'm aware of my own numbers. YouTube makes it so that you can't avoid that. So when you go in and you open up your account, you see your videos and how many views you've had, and they put your subscriber count up at the top. So you can't avoid that, but it's not something really that I look for in watching videos of people. I watch booktubers that I like, regardless of their numbers, and so it doesn't really come into my ken. Who needs more hype? Who needs more, I don't know what it would be, more of a public profile, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I've heard that there are booktubers that really put out heavily polished products with all kinds of fancy editing cuts and subtitles and all kinds of other bells and whistles, perhaps little bits of music, which somehow have been vetted through the algorithm, and YouTube has said it's okay, and that kind of thing. Those tend not to be the channels that I watch very much. I always appreciate good editing. For my own sake, it's not something I've devoted time to, but I would suppose a channel that did that kind of stuff would probably be making its own inroads into the kind of I'm just going for a word that I just can't think of. Going for the kind of again, public. And usually when I rewatch the video before I put it up, it's like that word that I just couldn't get. It's obvious, and I think, why didn't you just say that? But that's how it goes with these things. You know, if I can't imagine that there's much of a future to be had in BookTube as far as monetarily. I mean, I'm sure there's always exceptions. You know, in the old days, Rod McEwen was a poet. Poets, as a rule, don't make money from poetry, but there are exceptions. Rod McEwen was a great exception when I was young. But for the most part, poetry is not an activity one engages in for the money, because there be no money. And I think for the most part, BookTube is exactly the same sort of thing. It is a recreational activity. It is done because we like the community, the communion, the talking about books, and so forth. Not because we have high ambitions of achieving some kind of fame. Now, I mean, the two booktubers that I started with at the top of my show that I confused one for the other, Jack Edwards and Steve Donahue, are, of course, booktubers in those upper echelons So I guess it is possible, though I don't know respectively how much money that they make. I believe Steve doesn't make very much, and I don't believe that Jack talks much about that. So that's how that goes. So I think I have answered this adequately, and as usual, I have gone on longer than I needed to. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.